Attention in the barn, we'd like to ask all of our volunteers, all of you folks that got pinned early, our committee people, come on up and let's man the gate. We're about ready to start. We need to have you folks come up and get on these gates. Please head this way.
But she said she'll try to get here a little bit. So.
Right there, so she needs to have this with her. Okay, that's it.
Held it in a while. Yeah, we'll need to take turns with this one on the. Oh, if it works that way, sometime we get. We can. We'll see how this works. They're both. Okay. Okay. Good. So we can use either one. You're good. Okay. What time is it, John? We had a 7:54. Deal here in Slippery. Okay. Okay. We'll just wait a little bit. Are you going to come and get ready? Yeah. We're going to start the Junior Breeding Gilt show off with the Berkshires here in a little bit. So if you have one of the first class of Berkshire Gilts, kind of be getting ready and be on standby.
We need a few more gate people up here. have your attention in the barn. If we're going to need some gate folks up here, and some of you folks that we pre-stalled, it's kind of the understanding that you'd be volunteering to help. So let's be, so you've got somebody standing around, a kid that you can spare for a few minutes, send them this way. Ladies and gentlemen, we're about ready to kick off our breeding gilt shows here today in San Angelo. And to get us started, very fortunate to have Amanda Dushik, daughter of Daryl and Shannon Dushik, lives in Corpus Christi, Texas. She's a junior at Cal Allen High School. She's a member of the Cal Allen 4-H. If you're in the barn at this time, please stand up, remove your caps, find one of these flags that's hanging, and we're going to turn the microphone over to Amanda.
Yeah, we'll do it with you, but if you start it off, it'd be a little.
So do this pledge and then we'll do that. Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star
We thank you, Amanda. We're about ready to begin. I need to give a few reminders. CTBR exhibitors, make sure you bring your CTBR certificate with you to each class. We're ready for you to bring Crossbred Lightweight Class number 1, CTBR Gilts, Crossbred Class 1. Bring them to the holding pens.
Struggle getting this mic on.
Huh?
Push it. All right, we're ready for the first class of Berkshire's Gilts, the Junior Breeding Gilt Show. The first class, bring your pedigree to the ring. We don't need a CTBR certificate, but bring your pedigree to the ring, and you can start bringing the first class of Berkshire Gilts. Hello. How are you? Real well. You doing okay? Good. We'll get going. Okay, we're all right. Now's the time to introduce the judge a little bit? Yeah, a little bit. I want to introduce our judge today. His name is Jonas McGrew. He's from New Hope, Illinois. His wife also came with him, Jill. She's sitting here, and they have a daughter, Kylie, that they left at home. And if back in the day, if you were trying to raise real good white down-eared hogs, there were two boars you used. Earlier, you used the shotgun wedding boar that Kyle Stevens had, and then you needed to follow up with the Zeus boar. And if you hadn't heard of Jonas McGrew, he's the man that bred the Zeus boar. It's an excellent landrace boar. And could you give him a hand for coming this far?
Again, we need your first class of Crossbred Gilts to the holding ring. As we look today and it's jam-packed, we've got some chairs that are set up right along the fence back there as Gilts are trying to come up to the holding ring. We need to remove the chairs from there. I know everybody wants to get a good look, but we need to make sure we clear the alley and get those Gilts up to the ring. At this time, we're going to excuse the Crossbred Gilts from the auxiliary ring. If we would, let's give those youngsters a nice round of applause and make sure we clear the gate area and that pathway on back. This time we're going to call Class 2 Crossbred Gilts. Class 2 Crossbred Gilts to the holding ring.
Okay, wonderful. It's on if you want to. Maybe ask them to get on. Yeah. That'd be great. If you don't want to, I'll do it. It's wonderful if you do it. It's on.
Unfortunately, we've got to go ahead and dismiss the Berkshire Gilts that are left out in the ring. There's some nice pieces that we've got out here that I've kind of sorted through. Some of these Gilts we just need to widen them up at the ground. We've got a couple Gilts out here that are stout, that are shapely, but Gilts that we need to fix them structurally in a few areas. But there really is a nice set of Gilts, and there's some nice pieces out here. Let's give these exhibitors a nice round of applause as they leave.
Again, we need Class 2 Crossbred Gilts, Class 2 Crossbred Gilts to the holding ring.
Her length of stride is really good from her hock, in her hock and her hip and her hind leg. I think she's plenty wide, but at the same time, I love how fresh she is. She's got a big square back in her. She's got a big, deep, hard turn to her squareness to her forerib. I love the fact that her tail's laid up there way on her back, and she's a stout-featured female. If she's within her skeleton enough for you, I think this is a tremendous female. I think she offers a lot of breeding value to the world here. This gilt coming out next is really a nice profiling gilt. One of the trendier-headed, slicker-fronted females has just got a great look from the side view. I don't think she's a stout-featured when she goes to the ground. I think she's given up some true muscularity to the top end. The blue gilt is really a nicely presented female. Got a big square back in her. I'd like to see more rib shape, and she's not as coordinated off the rear too. Real nice class.
All right, Carly Mills from Eastland FFA. This is your last call. All right, here on the Berkshire side, these gilts in the ring are released. If you'd please give these exhibitors a round of applause for their efforts, we'd appreciate it.
I'd like to call Class 4 Crossbred Gilts. Class 4 Crossbred Gilts to the holding ring.
If you're in the third class of Berkshire Gilts in the junior show, you can start making your way to the holding pen. The third class of Berkshire Gilts, you can slowly start headed your way.
Results out of Class 2 Crossbred Gilts. In 10th place, Chessie Smith, Borger FFA, gilt bred by Triple Creek Show Hogs of Borger. In 9th place, Cara Pascal, Dickens County 4-H.
Got some power, she's got some shape, but a gilt that I just need to stouten her up a little bit at starting from the ground up to move her on up.
Again, we need to clear out where the gilts are coming up into the ring on both sides. We need to clear out of that alley. We need Class 4 gilts in the holding ring. Class 4 on the crossbred side.
Here in this class of crosses, we got a nice class to deal with. This young lady here's got our thin belted gilt to win the class. Here's one that balances up from the side extremely good. Love the length of front end. Love the fact that she can get out and move on both ends. I'll be the first to tell you I'd like to see more skull and more structure in this female. She doesn't go to the ground with as big a foot. I'd like to see more width between her eyes and stouten her up. But here's one that has that inner body dimension and that length of stride, that muscularity in a really nice complete package. Young man here in second hole, he's got a really nice gilt that's got more dimension in terms of bone and structure than our class winner. She's really opened up the top of her blade. She's got a tremendous front end laid in her. She can really reach and go out of that front end. I find her to be a little bit more compact in her frame size. She's a little shorter in her hip, and we'd like to just fix that hind leg structure so she can just drive a little more smoothly off that rear end. The young lady coming here in fourth has a really stout featured female. Love the rib shape and the volume that this gilt offers. She tends to be a little bit shorter coupled. She's a little more jammed up in her front end. Doesn't have that length and extension up through that front end. I'd like to make her a little more secure in her rear foot by giving her a bigger toe spread and making her more secure off that rear hock. Young man's spotted hog coming out next is one that really has a lot of stoutness to her. Big and square open toes in this gilt. Love the structure.
A reminder for the exhibitors today, we've got Devin Sis Photography back here and scattered with the San Angelo Stock Show taking photos. We've got our crew in the ring, but please do go back to the backdrop and get your gilts pictured.
All right, here on the Gilt Show, we're missing Rachel Gavlik from Edwards County 4-H and Giovanni Kitts from Comfort FFA. You two exhibitors need to make your way to the holding pen on the Berkshire side. Okay, I got a couple other issues. Okay.
County 4-H, breeder, Mare's Show Pigs of Brownwood. In sixth, Carly Norton, Dripping Springs FFA, gilt bred by Mock Livestock, Heiko. Fifth, exhibited by Seth Wilcox of Nolan County 4-H, breeders on the gilt, W2 Show Pigs, Roscoe. In fourth, Terry Don Weinscott, Graham FFA, bred by Thomas Show Pigs, Jacksboro. In third, Brenna Wallace, Blanco FFA, breeder on the gilt, Fishbacher Show Pigs, Wildorado. Your second place gilt, exhibited by, what's the last name? Bailey Diaz of Coleman FFA. And your class winner, shown by Robert Wyatt of Graham FFA. At this time, we're going to ask our first and
Man's gilt I've got coming out here in fourth is another balances up extremely well. Another gilt that's opened up. She's got a big old chest floor in her, but a gilt that I'd like to see just set them down a little bit wider when she drives right at you. A gilt that I'd like to just clean her up a little bit up front and make her a little stouter, a little square, a little fresher right there at the top of her blade, but a nice kind of a gilt there. Young lady's gilt I've got coming out next is another gilt that's really opened up, gives you a ton of shape. She's another big centered kind of a gilt, but a gilt that I'd just like to see her set them down a little bit wider when she drives away from you. A gilt that I'd like to see her tie in a little bit better right there at her ham-loin junction, but a nice kind of a gilt to be fifth.
Now we can maybe fix her off her hind leg just ever so slightly, but this gilt's got that substance of bone, that stoutness of feature, and she's got really good range of motion front and rear. She takes a long, easy stride. Some people might get onto her because she's a little bit down in her pasture, maybe a little bit long in her pasture. And I don't bother.
At this time, we're going to call Class 6 Crossbred Gilts. Class 6 Crossbred Gilts to the holding ring.
Barrett. Folks, we're now going to be selecting our champion, lightweight division crossbred gilt. Class 1, we have Alexandra Ely. Comfort FFA. Class 2, Michaela Lorwald from Florence FFA. Our Class 1 winner, congratulations to Ali Garcia from Bangs FFA. Our Class 4 winner was Robert Wyatt of the Graham FFA. And out of Class 5, we have Sadie Hardison from the Fredericksburg FFA. Let's have that first class of middleweights. Bring them up.
In our Crossbred Gilt Show, we've got a tremendous division here to start off the day. I really like these class winners out here. We've got some that just represent what we're trying to get done. Sound, functional females that are really nice. I think they've got one out here that just got that little bit extra stoutness of features, that extra power and dimension. I love the way she comes towards you. Big old powerful blade. She can drop her spine and really drive off those rear two. The young lady that won that last class is your champion in this lightweight.
Congratulations to Sadie Hardison, the Fredericksburg FFA, for your champion crossbred.
Young lady's gilt here. We just need to free her up a little bit when she goes away from you and maybe give her just a shot more bone to get her to move on up. Nice class of Berkshire gilts. Let's give these exhibitors another round of applause.
Results out of Class 5 on the crossbred side. In 10th, Bailey Smith, FFA. At this time, we're excusing the gilts from the auxiliary ring on the crossbred side, if you would.
Red spotted gilt is one that I really love for her fresh
Age and a little more weight on them. Two gilts that got some difference. Powerful, kind of like the gilt that I.
Class 8 spread gilts. Class 8.
There's just one class.
Berkshire gilt looking like, and kind of what what we strive to make on our few Berkshire sows that we've got at home, and I'm extremely pleased with all these gilts. There's a full design in terms.
And square off that.
Like I said, not taking anything away from this gilt that we've got in second. This gilt's really big bladed. She's really square right there. Might be the stoutest, heaviest bone, stoutest featured gilt in the drive, but to me, she gets a little.
Class Poland in the first class come to the holding pen. We only had 2 classes of that.
Fifth place exhibited by Manuel Esquivel of Denver City FFA, bred by Go Stand. The lightweight cell gilt.
Gilt that I think needs to start this class. This is typically the type and kind that I lean towards a little bit. This gilt's really extended when you study her up through that head. As I talked in class, a little bit more extended up through her.
Too. The gilt coming out there in her third hole that I'd like to see is better out of her rump structure. She tends to be a little shorter in her muscle pattern, shorter in her hip, and consequently.
Yancey. In seventh, Sage.
Larissa Hampton, Gorman FFA, Lampier, Winners FFA, and Letty.
Gilts to the holding ring.
Really nice class of white OPBs here to start her up and get her to move out with a little bit more ease off of both ends to move on up. But a nice, shapely, stout of a gilt. Young lady's gilt here in fifth is kind of the problem gilt.
Muscle shape in her. She's not the thickest end here, but I just love her comfort level and the way she's built. The blue-eyed female, we talked to her in the last class as being one that just is so out there in terms of muscle shape and degree of power, yet she handles extremely well. Love her. Her base width is true, and she's honest for that kind of power. She maintains that kind of trueness at the ground. Really a high-quality underline in this female. I don't read her to have as much natural rib shape or as much softness or pliability in her center body as compared to her spotted gilt. I don't think she's quite as heavy structured, but one that really can push the envelope out there. And I'll tell you what, we talked about it, and what Chris said is if the blue-eyed gilt, if you had one of those, she could really turn the crank and generate you a great one. The spotted one, we'd love to have 100 of them. So I think those two really have a lot of things to offer to us. And as far as just sow power and what I want in my breeding pen, the spotted gilt's your champion.
We will break for lunch on the crossbred side.
I saw her. There's some things I'd like to change about her. There's another really shapely, really stout featured.
The stride from behind, maybe make that rear leg and that hock set a little bit more comfortable in her. But this one just is fault-free and kind of needs to land here in the second hole. The black gilt out there in third is one that's just...
She balances up a little bit.
What's his name? Zach what?
Movement out here, but you can still get a good read on this girl's structure. I mean, she's extremely square. Where young man's gilt we've got coming out in third here is a gilt that just ran into a tough pair of heads that I'd like to maybe just elevate her a little bit right there at the top part of her shoulder. A gilt that I'd just like to open her up when she drives away from you. But a nice, a nice kind of a gilt to be third. Young man's gilt coming out is one that I just like to set her down a little bit on those back toes. When she goes away from you, she kind of stands up on those back toes, and I think if she did that, she'd get around this ring with a little bit more ease, but really a big back, shapely kind of a gilt. A nice young man's gilt we've got coming out here in fifth is one that gets a little more coupled up front, one that starts to lay
Great, man. Great judge, great superintendent, great helpers. Well, he's taking tall, long in front, not super wide. I mean, some of these hawks went over here and I went over here. They're real wide, thick. You don't want them that wide, thick. You want them tall. Who knows? We are where we are.
I like that youngest class.
Yeah.
Kara Pascal, breeder of that hog was Shane and Berkshire.
Both of these gilts are just extremely good in that area. In my mind, it comes down to you got the young man's lighter pigmented red gilt over here that's just a powerhouse. She comes at you with a great big old chest floor. She's really, really big bladed. She's really got a ton of center body. She's big hipped and big rumped. You got the young lady's gilt, darker colored gilt over here that's a little bit big. She's got a ton of shape down her. A gilt that I just like to fix her structurally right there ever so slightly. Young man's gilt we've got coming out next
For Silco from Canyon FA.
Again, on the crossbred side, we're calling class 13 crossbred gilts to the holding ring. 13 to the holding ring.
Class coming in, class 13.
Both front and rear. She's a gilt really busted up. She comes right at you. Really, really super. When you study the top side of her skeleton, you're just a little bit stouter. And
solid female, good place to start. Maybe the unique one in the class is that this gilt coming out. Go ahead and place any higher. Good class.
Preview FFA, bred by Ramax Show Pigs, D. McLaughlin of Vernon. In sixth, Rylan Rogers, Baird FFA, breeder on that gilt, R4 Genetics, Burke and Cammie Robinson of Putnam. Fifth, Maddie Mann of Coryell County 4-H, gilt bred by C4 Show Pigs, Jim and Beverly Cogburn of Colorado City. In fourth place, Nashton Guthrie of Gorman FFA, gilt bred by Hampton Show Pigs of Gorman. In third, Kelly Koenig of Florence FFA, gilt bred by K&K Farms of Hale Center. And your second place gilt was driven by Mason Hoffman of San Angelo. And your class winning gilt exhibited by Hallie Bullard of New Braunfels FFA.
We got a really nice, really nice pair of gilts here to start off this drive. You know, gilts that got some similarities, but gilts that have got some pieces that kind of divide these two gilts up. And lighter color is one that.
All right, placings in Class 3 Durocs. Where's 6? Okay. 5th place is Riggs Pennington, Hemphill County. 4th place, Larissa Hampton, Gorman. 3rd place, Alan McGurk, Callisburg. 2nd place, Kenneth Gus Arterbury.
I think a tremendous female to lead off this class. Certainly one that has a little more back shape and probably a little bit more robust shape to the center of her body. But this female isn't quite as correct at the.
By Trent Helms, Ballinger FFA. We are
Time you got to find the one that balances up and is still stout, is still powerful, still gives you plenty of shape, plenty of width, and I think the gilt that does that best for me is the young lady's gilt. I think she's one that when you get off and study her on the side, she's a little. Next is one that like I said, just got in a class with big gilts ahead of her. She's one that I'd like to clean her up a little bit. I read her as maybe being a little earlier maturing, you know, maybe covering a little bit too much, carrying a little too much cut in terms of her front 1/3.
Female that's also got lots of dimension to her rib, lots of body. She's a big, massive female that balances up extremely well. Love the fact that she's got extension up through her front end. A really good, outstanding female build to her. I don't think she's true.
St. Angela from Wheeler County. 4th, Bailey Hicks from Abilene Wiley. 3rd,
Crossbred side. In 10th, exhibited by Connor Pence of Tom Green County 4-H. Gilt bred by Munn Livestock of Wall. In 9th place, Callie Joe Briley of Veribest FFA. Noco Show Pigs, Derek Osborne, Desdemona the breeder. In 8th, Kaylee Humphrey, Terry County 4-H. Of Texas pork producers in the CTBR program.
Okay, we've released these Duroc gilts. If you'd give these exhibitors a hand, I'm sure they'd appreciate it, and thank them for coming.
On the crossbred side, we like to call back our first and second place gilts from the heavy division. So classes 11 through 14, first and second place gilts to come back up to the ring for our heavy division drive. If you would, give these exhibitors a nice round of applause as they exit the main ring. Again, we need our first and second place gilts from our heavy division of crosses. First and second place heavyweight gilts.
This is the first call for Class 6 Durocs on the purebred side. First call for Class 6 Durocs. You can bring them to the holding pen.
I apologize. I know I took quite a bit more time than what I have been, and probably a lot more time than what I should have. But this is a really, really deep set of red gilts, and I'll tell you, you got to get down. You got to start studying pieces, and you got to hit them from every angle. And I just wanted to make sure I gave everybody a fair shake on these. And the pair of gilts I've got out here right now are completely different in terms of their type and kind. The young lady's gilt here to my right is one that I had winning this class for the longest time. The young man's gilt to my left is one that kind of caught my eye maybe as the drive went on. But the young man's gilt is one that really, really opens up with a big old chest floor. She's got a big blade and a big shoulder. I really love the way that front end ties together. She's one that's really bold through the center part of her body. She's big hipped, and she's not the stoutest. She's not the stoutest structured gilt in the class. She might not be the most mobile in terms of her back too, but I think for what that gilt is, and for the tallness to her frame. The tallness to her frame, the mass that she's got, that gilt just puts a lot of pieces together, and she gets around the ring. She gets around the ring good enough for me, and she was doing a lot better than that earlier in the drive. But young lady's gilt I've got here in second is one that really hit me hard from the get-go. Is one that's extremely clean through her front 1/3, one that gives you a really, really good look from the side. She's really square right there at the top of her shoulder. She tracks true and square. She's wide when you study her at the ground. To me, I just like to give her a little more size. I mean, she gets a little more coupled up. She gets a little smaller in terms of her outline. That's a gilt that we need to make just a little bit bigger scaled, and maybe even give her a shot more bone. I think she might not be the frailest in the class, and I'm not calling her frail by any means, but she certainly could use maybe just a shot more bone, especially in those rear two. Young lady's gilt we've got coming out here in third is another one that fits in that top pair pretty well. She's one that's extremely wide. To me, she kind of started to labor on those back two a little bit. She got a little more restricted in terms of her movement. She got a little shorter in terms of her stride, but a gilt that's really opened up. A nice gilt to be third. Young lady's gilt we've got coming out in fourth is another one that maybe I would like to change that front end a little bit. As I kind of saw her as she was one that wanted to start laboring in terms of how she was moving off of those front two. She's one that maybe I'd like to even clean up a little bit up there in that jowl area. But but one that really offers a lot of good pieces in terms of being good balance from there back, and bold and deep about her forerib. The young man's gilt we've got here next is another one that's deep and bold in terms of their forerib, one that really offers you a lot of product when you study her, but one that I'd like to just stouten up at the ground, one that kind of wants to narrow a little bit when she goes away from you, but a really nice gilt. Young lady's gilt we've got rounding out the class is one that again kind of narrows up when she goes away from you. If I could stouten her up and widen her up there, I could maybe move her up and maybe even extend her out through her front head and neck, as I think she kind of gets a little more coupled up there.
Over here in our Crossbred show, we're going to end up the day on a really nice class. We've got a pair of belted gilts that I think we could go either way with. I've had them kind of swapped them back and forth here and there, but young lady's gilt probably just has a little bit more look. She's a taller statured female that's got more height to shoulder and more reach and range, especially off her rear too. I love you get in on top of this gilt. She's really busted open through the center part of her body, got a big fresh back laid in her. I just love the reach and the range that she has. I'd like to maybe fix her at her toe spread. I'd like to give her a little bit bigger toe and maybe go to the ground a little bit more square up front, maybe open her up just a little bit at her chest floor, but that's a really nice sound functional gilt here in first hole. Young man's gilt looks more like a sow. I mean, you look at this female, her underlying quality is just exceptional. She's got a big old deep turn to her forerib. She just looks like a sow that's got, you could just get lots of mileage out of them, breed her to an infinite number of boars and types and kind of boars and just come out with great ones. I mean, this gilt's really nice. She's got an awesome pin set, exceptional hind leg. She gets a little bit deep fronted. I'd like to see her tie in a little bit neater about her neck, and I think she could be just a little bit squarer right there at her hock set. Away. Young man here with the chromey gilt coming out in third is one that I was going to use at the top of the class a little higher initially. I like this gilt extremely well. She's the powerhouse of the group. I just didn't know where she was going to land. This gilt gets a little longer in her front pastern, gets a little bit coarser about her mobility as she comes out of her front end, but man, she's a beastly thing that's got a big old back. You talk about power from as she tracks away and how wide her pin set is and how she can still with all that mass, she's really sound and functional. That's a really nice female. Young lady coming out there in fourth hole's got a fault-free black nose gilt that's just real sound and basic in her kind, very functional in her makeup, extended up through her front end. And I didn't think she was a stout featured. She goes to the ground with a smaller foot. She's not as robust about her skull and powerful about her skull, but shapely, balanced. It's a really nice female. The young lady with the big, powerful blue coming next has got a big bladed, big-backed, high-volume female. I think the sow potential in this gilt is extremely good. She's not as natural with her head carried. She's not as tall-statured, but this is a really powerful female that's got lots of dimension.
On the crossbred side, we need our division champs and reserves, our light and medium division champs and reserves to come up to the holding.
It's maybe a little more. She's got a little more hip and rump than our class winner does, but again, front toes a little bit and get them kind of turn and face forward, maybe open her up a little bit as she comes at you. We'll move her on up.
Was Alan Mayfield, Andrews County fourth, Courtney Baldwin,
and Franklin Lampier for winners.
Okay, we're missing. He's in the
more comfortable of the three in terms of range of motion. And flawless structure. She's the one you want to tie to. You got to ask yourself, does she have muscle shape? Does she have enough dimension to win, dimension and power to win a big this? You know, the big heavyweight gilt there, the one in our last class, as we talked to her in class, she's got one flaw. Past that, that's a beastly.
And we haven't introduced Kyle to you yet because he's been behind the scenes over here, but Kyle is our superintendent of our sale committee. He's worked extremely hard yesterday in lining up gilts. I've asked Rick Whitman, our judge, to go ahead and talk about this gilt for just a second, and then we're going to put her back. She will sell as lot number 3 Tuesday night in the select gilt sale. Rick?
We saw Denver in the Berkshire show here a couple.
Had the champion spot.
County will be the CTBR.
Another gilt that I'd like to see her base just wider when she goes away from you, and I'd maybe like to see her just a little more of her shape.
Revisit with our judges. Both of these guys, the tires on their truck, the clothes on their back, and the food that goes on the table comes from the pig farm. These are pig farmers. Chris, we want to thank you for a great job coming back. I'm glad to get you back in. Let's give Chris a big round of applause.
All right, we're missing 3 Duroc Gilts in this class. Hayden, Rose, Boyd, Kendall County, 4-H. Landry Nance, Valley View, FFA. And Clayton Novak, Poolsville, FFA. Please come to the holding pen.
With that being said, you know, we've evaluated these other hogs and we talked about them. We like the Crossbred second best. She's a reserve champion.
Once that's done, we're going to have a meeting with all of those exhibitors to go over the procedures from there as far as moving gilts, picturing gilts, the plan over the next couple days leading up to our sale on Tuesday evening. So be looking out over that in the next.
Might be one of the shorter striding gilts off of those back two, but that's still a big outline, nicely balanced, brute kind of a gilt to be in third. Young ladies gilt we've got coming out next is another one that's.
And now we're starting to judge Class 9, last class of Durocs. If you have a first or second place Duroc gilt, kind of be getting ready because you'll be coming up here.
one that's extremely elevated at the point of her shoulder. She's one that gets a little coupled up, really opened up. She's one that gives up a little bit in terms of her bone work, in terms of her substance of her bone work.
And then in a little bit you'll have to. Okay, on this last class, 5th place was Kaylee Hilton, Florence FFA. Madeline Bergeron, Vista Ridge FFA. 3rd, Kinsley Jordan, Mason County 4-H. 2nd, Claire Roan, Pleasanton FFA. And 1st place, Kaylee Wolfers from Gillespie County.
Gotcha. You need the board?
Sir? Okay. We're going to judge the Hampshires, and we have 2 classes of Hampshires. So if you're in the 1st class of Hampshire, start making your way up to the holding pen. The 1st class of Hampshires. Are we going by the...
I kind of read her that way a little bit.
You girls are all right. All right, for on a very competitive Duroc show, our champion was Braden Smith from Abilene Wiley FFA in the reserve. And our reserve was Peyton Arrett from Bront.
Gilt, that we just open up a little.
Okay, the judge has released these exhibitors from this ring. If you'd give them a hand, they'd appreciate it.
That's a little more attractive in terms of her design. She's a little more attractive in terms of her shape. She's a gilt that if you study her right out of her blade, she's got a ton of shape down that top. She's extremely square when you study her from the ground up. The young lady's wider belted gilt is one that's a little bit softer in terms of her design, one that's carrying a little bit more cover up through that for a bit more cover.
Here we have our champion. Hampshire was from Class 1, Riley Campbell, Hale County 4-H.
structure that this gilt has, and even more so, I love how square she is when you study her on the ground, and how well all four of those, how well her running gear works, or how well she gets out and moves. She's got plenty of reach and plenty of flexibility. Really, really like that gilt to start this drive. Young man's gilt we've got in second. Here's a little bit of a bigger outline kind of a gilt. She's maybe a little bit more extended in terms of her rib. A gilt that's got a ton of shape when you study her down her top. A gilt that's really, really heavy boned and big footed. A gilt that I just like to see her with a little bit more flex off of them back two. I'd like to see her take a little bit of a longer stride to move on up. Young lady's gilt coming out in third is another one that I'd like to fix that hind leg set just a little bit. I'd like to make her kind of stand up a little bit taller and on her pasterns, be a little bit straighter there. But a nice stout kind of a gilt to go third, and if we can fix her in a few of those problem areas, we can move her on up. Young man's gilt coming out next is kind of the opposite of the one ahead of him. She's one that kind of wants to get up on her toes a little bit, and if we can make her a little more relaxed there, I think she'd get out and move a little bit better, and that gilt would move on up, because I love the stoutness and the squareness that she has. Young lady's gilt coming out next is a bigger outline gilt that's really, really balances up extremely well. She gets out here and is extremely mobile. I read her as being a little bit plainer and a little bit flatter in terms of her shape. Young lady's gilt here leading off the class is another one that's really square when you study her up high. We just need to relax her and her spine a little bit and maybe blow her apart at the ground.
All right, the placings in this first class of spots are fifth place, Abigail McWhirter from Coppers Clove. Fourth place, Marty Wysoon from Wall, FFA. Third place, Taylor M. Lees from Abernathy, FFA. Second place, Brock Edelman, Callisburg, FFA. And our class winner was Logan Webb from Ingram, FFA. Okay, we're missing 3 spot gilts in this class. Justin Glass, Reagan County 4-H, Brandon Glass from Reagan County 4-H, and Caden Campos from Reeves County 4-H. If you guys want to have your pigs shown, you need to come to the ring real quick, or at least let us know. Okay, the judge has released these gilts in the ring. If you'd give these young people a round of applause, it'd be appreciated. Okay, it's 5 o'clock, and if you have a vehicle located next to the fence or the doors, I believe the tow truck is here, so help everybody out and get your stuff moved so we can continue getting these animals loaded out.
I think we've got one spot gilt that kind of works her way to the top for me, the young man in front of me. This gilt's gonna win this drive just in terms of squareness. When you study her from the ground up, this gilt gets out in motors and is extremely square on both ends. A gilt that's got a ton of shape up high. I'd like to maybe strengthen her a little bit right there in her top line. And the longer the drive goes on, she's getting a little bit shorter in terms of her stride on her back too, but she's been out here running for quite a while. The young lady's bigger outline gilt I've got in second is one that gives up a little bit just in terms of mass in her bone work. A gilt that is kind of the opposite of our class winner. I'd like to maybe even relax her in her top line just a little bit. But a gilt, if we could give a shot more bone, I think she'd move on up. Young lady's gilt I've got coming out next is one that I read as being a little shorter coupled, a little bit smaller in terms of her framework, a little bit shorter in terms of her length of body, but a gilt that's got some shape, she's got some substance. I love the way the front 1/3 of this gilt is all ties together. A gilt that gets out and moves, and she's square when you study her from the ground up. Young lady's gilt I've got coming out next is another one maybe that just gets a little bit tight in terms of her top line. If we could relax her a little bit there, if we could maybe free her up on her back too, we can move her on up the drive. Young lady's gilt coming out next is one that balances up extremely well, one that you really, really have to appreciate the look that she gives you from the side, one that's a little more elevated, especially through that front 1/3, but you get right behind this gilt, you get a little disappointed as she narrows up a little bit, and she kind of runs out of some muscle. If we could give her a shot more muscle and a shot more bone mass, we can move her on up. Young man's gilt we've got rounding out the class is one that is opened up just a little bit more, but she's one that kind of wants to run downhill a little bit. She's one that gets a little bit narrower when you study her at the ground, but a nice gilt to end out the drive.
We need Class 3 spots to the holding ring, Class 3 spots to the holding ring, and the placings on Class 2 were 5th place, Sadie A. Walsh from Graham, FFA, 4th place, Peyton Ralston, Dallam Hartley County 4-H, 3rd place, Andrew Braden Voigt, City View, FFA, 2nd, Aspen Miller, Briscoe County, and our class winner was Haiti Cabello from Plainview, FFA.
power that she's got, but I don't know if it comes in a big enough package, and she kind of started to labor a little bit more off of those hind two as the drive progressed on. The gilts on down the line, we just need to change in a few places. The young lady's gilt here is another one that's really, really stout and square and wide. A gilt that, again, runs downhill a little bit for me, and a gilt that kind of narrows up at the ground when she goes away from you. If we could fix in a couple of those places, that gilt could run with the top end of this class.
Okay, the placings in this class of spots: fifth place, Faith Claiborne, Dalhart, FFA. Fourth place, Sawyer Kent Thompson from Paducah, FFA. Third, Riley Langford, Graham, FFA. Second, Mariana Herrera, Plano East, FFA. And our class winner was Blake Mills from Centerpoint, FFA. We're now going to start judging our last class of spots. And if you have a first or second place class of spots, kind of be on hold in your holding pen. Likewise, after this, we just have the Yorkshires left.
How many hogs did we have here last year?
We can move her on up the drive. Young lady's gilt coming out next is one that we to balance up a little bit when she gets on the move. She kind of gets the laboring a little bit out of that front shoulder. We'd like to change the angle of that to get her moved on up. Young man's gilt coming out here is one that's really an attractive profiling kind of a gilt. A gilt that you love. You love the look and the design about her. I read her as being a little plainer and a little rounder in terms of her shape. when you study her up high, if we could just kind of freshen her up and crispen her up in terms of her top shape, we can move her on up. Young lady's really got a stout, powerful, heavy structure kind of a gilt coming out here at the end of the drive, one that really comes at you square and wide, but we really need to pay attention to her back too when she goes away. We need to change the set to that hawk, and we need to widen her up at the ground to get her to move on up, but a nice gilt to round out the drive.
Okay, let's go ahead and bring the first class of Yorkshires to the holding pen. The first class of Yorkshires, we're judging for champion spot. Eddie Williams, Scurry County 4-H. Your class is being shown. Please come to the show ring. Okay, these gilts are released. If you want to head them back to the pen and give these kids a hand. We found a lost pedigree, Brody Sonor from Plainview. Your pedigree will be up here at the announcer stand if you need it. Somebody may show up for this. Is that yours?
It's one of my kids.
Okay. Okay. This is a pig that came late and you haven't judged. It goes in this class, okay? You haven't seen him. Just go ahead and let him out. Well, you may not like him, you may like him. It's a late comer. You may want to restart. You do what you want to do. Okay. I'll do what I want to do. I'll do what needs to be done. That's good. Okay, we're going to call the second class of Yorkshires. The second class of Yorkshires, make your way to the holding pen.
I think we get out here in this first class of the Yorkshire Gilts, and I think there's one Gilt that finds their way to the top fairly easily, the young lady's smaller Gilt here in the middle. I really love a lot of things about this Gilt. I think she's extremely good. She's extremely good in so many areas. She balances up extremely well. She's got a lot of shape when you study her down her top. She's extremely square from the ground up. She's an up-headed kind of a show Gilt. I really like the youthfulness that she brings. Obviously, she's a little bit of a younger Gilt, but she's just so square, so good built, so fluid and flexible off of both ends. She naturally finds her way to the top. Young lady's Gilt we've got in second here is one that's not quite as stout in terms of her feature, in terms of her bone work. She's a Gilt that's got a ton of center body, but I think she gets a little bit flatter in terms of her upper rib. She's a Gilt that maybe I'd like to see just a little bit more fluid, a little bit more flexible off of her hind two. If we could just kind of stouten her feature up a little bit, I think we can move her on up. Young man's Gilt we've got coming out in third. To me, this was kind of the closer pair. My second place Gilt and this young man's little third place Gilt here. This is the stouter feature Gilt. She's a heavier bone, bigger footed kind of a Gilt. She's still one that balances extremely well. She's long and she's level and she's pretty, but she's one that we just have to square up on the ground off of both ends to get her to move on up. Young lady's Gilt we've got coming out next is one that's a little bit softer made, one that's carrying a little bit more cover on her, but one that's still opened up, one that's still square. We could just maybe clean her up a little bit, and maybe I say she's still square. She's square from on the top part of her skeleton, but I read her as maybe needing to square up a little bit at the ground when she goes away from you. Young lady's Gilt coming out next is another bigger Gilt that. Is another bigger Gilt that I read as being a little bit drier in terms of her forerib. A Gilt that I'd like to fix off of both ends of her skeleton. I'd like to just loosen her up a little bit in terms of her stride, and I'd like to maybe just give her a touch more bone off of both ends to get her to move on up. Young lady's Gilt here that dropped into the class a little bit late, which was fine. This is a good kind of a Gilt, and I honestly feel this is kind of where she would have landed and needed to land. She's one that's really a big-centered, soft-made kind of a Gilt. She's square off of both ends. I read her as being maybe just a little bit shouldered, or needs to be a little bit more elevated at her shoulder. And a Gilt that I just need to clean up all the way through, especially up through her head and neck area.
Well, I'm glad you. Okie dokie. Let me get my line. Okay. The placings on the first class of Yorkshires: fifth place, Mary Rumley, Dalhart, FFA. Fourth place, Bailey Cabello, Hale County 4-H. Third place, Derek Suarez, Floydada, FFA. Second place, Nicole Blankenship, Moody, FFA. And our class winner was Lacey Seidenberger from Glasscock County 4-H. How about that? Okay, Allie Toll, Wichita County 4-H. Your class is being shown. Allie Toll, Wichita County 4-H. Can release these gilts with a holding pen. Could you please give these exhibitors a round of applause?
We got a really nice pair of Yorkshire gilts here in this second class. Gilts that have got some differences. The gilt to me that just excels in terms of width, and especially base width and even width up high. The young lady's gilt closest to me is going to be our class winner. Both of these gilts you get off and profile these girls, and they're extremely good in their profile. They're level topped. All their angles are correct. Gilts that can get out here and move and are really good in terms of the running gear. Their toes all point forward. They're extremely square from the ground up. And I love the extra mass and the extra power that this class winner gives me. Young lady's gilt I've gotten second. I absolutely love the front 2/3 of this gilt. She's really bold in terms of her blade. She's really wide in terms of her chest floor. I love the top shape that this gilt gives me. She gets beat when you get right behind her. She gets a little flatter and a little plainer in terms of her hip and her rump, and she gets a little frailer just in terms of her bone work when she's when she runs up next to our class winner. She just kind of gets outpowered in those places. Young man's gilt I've got coming out in third is certainly the power gilt of the drive. This gilt, you get right behind her and you don't think there's anything here that can touch her in terms of sheer mass, in terms of sheer dimension. But also, if you get to studying this gilt, I'm starting to see her with maybe just a little bit too much cover on her, especially up through her neck and her jowl area. A gilt that gets a little pinched right there at her ham loin. I think you get off to the side and you start studying these problem areas. That's when this gilt kind of falls down the line a little bit. Young lady's gilt we've got coming out next is certainly a heavy structured kind of a gilt. She's got a big shapely kind of a back in her, but a gilt that just narrows up at the ground when she drives away from you. A gilt that runs downhill ever so slightly. Young lady's gilt we've got coming out next is another heavy structured kind of a gilt. I'd like to just strengthen her up ever so slightly right there out of her shoulder where she ties that into her top line. Just kind of fix that problem area, and I think we can move her on up. Young man's gilt we've got coming out next is one that gets a little more coupled up front. I'd like to just extend her right there through her neck region. I'd like to maybe just see her go with a little more flex and a little more ease off those hind two, as I think she kind of gets to stomping them a little too hard to move on up the line for me today.
Okay, the placings in this second class of Yorks. Fifth place was Briston M. Lowry from Idalou FFA. The fourth place was Lauren B. Lowry from Idalou FFA. Third was Jason Flightman, Valley View FFA. Second, Kennedy G. Walker, Dalhart FFA. And our class winner was Sterling Skinner from Hale County 4-H. And now we're judging the third class of Yorkshires. And we have one more, and then we'll do our champion Yorkshire and the supreme overall. Moving right along.
can't wait to hear you pronounce this.
Which one?
Caden.
Oh, I talked to that guy. Okay, we're missing one hog, Caden Zickafoos from Nueces County. Your class is being showed, Caden Zickafoos. Okay, these gilts are released to go back to their pens. Could you please give these exhibitors a round of applause? Okay, if you have a Class 4 York, which is the last class of York, you can come to the holding pen. A Class 4 York, you can make your way to the holding pen.
We get into our third class of Yorkshire gilts, and we've got two nice gilts up here in the top pair, but to me there's one gilt that kind of surfaces to the top of my mind, the young lady smaller gilt here is going to be your class winner. This gilt's just extremely good when she gets out on the profile. She's up-headed, she's tall-fronted, she's extremely level about her top line. She's a stouter featured in terms of her bone work when you compare her to the bigger gilt that's out here. She's a gilt that I'd like to maybe fix just a little bit at the ground when she comes right at you. I'd like to just square them toes up a little bit, and that's where the second place gilt certainly has the advantage there. She also has the advantage in terms of being a really, really bold-made, big-bladed, big-centered, big-hipped, big-topped, big-rumped kind of a gilt. But to me, with the amount of mass and the amount of body that she's got, I'd like to see her just a little bit stouter in terms of her structure. And I'd like to see her maybe just a little bit freer in terms of her movement off of those back two. But two really nice gilts to lead off this class. Young ladies gilt I've got coming out in third here is one that, like my second place gilt, I really have to appreciate the stoutness and the power and the mass that this gilt has. She's another big-chested, big-bladed, big-topped gilt that really drops out of her top with a ton of rib and is really deep-sided in there as well. A gilt that's really big-hipped and big-rumped, but a gilt that we just need to fix on those back two legs. We need to square her up a little bit. We need to make her a little bit more secure as she drives away from you. Young man's gilt coming out here in fourth is one that really profiles extremely well. She's one that reads right in terms of her cover, in terms of her shape, for her size. But she's another one that we need to stouten up at the ground. We need to stouten her up in her bone work. We need to widen her base up just a little bit. Young ladies gilt we've got rounding out the class is one that just kind of gets outpowered in terms of her bone work. And she's another one that we just need to fix structurally a little bit off of both ends.
Okay, placing in this class of Yorkshires was Cambry Lynn Swartz from Miles FFA was fifth. Fourth place, Franklin Lampier from Winters FFA. Third place was Larissa Hampton Gorman FFA. Second place was Samantha Barnett from Florence FFA, and our class winner was Danielle Hilton from Florence FFA. And now we're judging our final class of Yorkshires, and then we'll judge for champion Yorkshire and then supreme gilt overall. So if you have a class winner or second place Yorkshire, kind of pay attention and get ready, because it won't be long. We'll be needing you up here. Okay, Carson Sukamel from Williamson County 4-H. Your class is being shown, the last class of Yorkshires. Carson Sukamel. Okay, these gilts in the ring are released. If you'd please give these exhibitors a hand, they'd appreciate it. And now we're going to place this last class of Yorkshires, and if you're a first or a second place in the first three classes, kind of make your way to the holding pen. The first and second Yorkshires are the first three classes. You need to head this way.
Two trailers out here that are loaded and they're drinking beer in the back of their pickup. Okay. While everybody's sitting in line. There's one person out there trying to direct everything. Okay. Huh? We'll try. I mean, they could be moving a whole lot faster than what it is out there.
If you're loaded up, could you get out of the way of the loading doors so the rest of the exhibitors could load up? And if you're blocking down on the south end with just pickups, you need to get your stuff and move out so these people who need to get loaded and go home can.
Really nice pair of Yorkshire gilts here in our final York class. Two gilts that I'm extremely happy with, I'm extremely pleased with. I've gone back and forth between these two gilts, but when it comes down to it, there's one of them that just pops up into that top hole. That's the young man's gilt. I think she's so much more extended up front. She's so much taller at the point of her shoulder. She's one that's really, really wide. She's a little bit up front, but another gilt that gives you a ton of shape when you study her down her top. Another gilt that's really deep-sided, and she is really, really square when you study her at the ground going away from you. Young lady's gilt coming out next is one that really likes to move around this ring. She has a hard time keeping up with her, but with that being said, I think she kind of needs to be a little bit more secure off of those hind two, and we just need to clean her up a little bit up front, make her balance up a little bit better to move her on up. Young man's gilt coming out next is one that just gets outpowered in terms of her bone work, one that needs to be a little bit more secure off of her back too, one that I think I'd like to just lengthen her up in her hip a little bit so she can get out and reach with just a little bit of a further of a step. And I think if we can get her to move a little bit better, we can move her on up the line.
Okay, the placings in this Class 4 of the Yorkshires were 5th place, Kayla Elizabeth Morgan, Medina, FFA. 4th place, Slade Lovelace, Plains, FFA. 3rd, Kendall Nimitz, Pleasanton, FFA. 2nd, Allison Holenbeck, Abilene, Wiley, FFA. And our class winner was from Kendall County 4-H, Bailey Allerkamp. We're now showing for champion Yorkshires. After this, we'll show for the supreme champion. So if you have a breed, a reserve breed, you need to make your way to the holding pen.
Really, really nice set of class-winning Yorkshire gilts here. I'm extremely happy with these four, and I've got a little bit of a passion for the Yorkshire breed, I guess. We raise several Yorks at home. That's one of our top 2 or 3 breeds, and we're always striving to make them better. And I guarantee you, I would love to have any of these 4 gilts back at home and in our operation. And they're all gilts that I think are going to make the breed better. They're all gilts that look like they would go on to breed and make the breed better. And I don't think you're going to have any problems with any of these. They're all kind of fault-free breeding pieces in my mind. And you know, I talked the young lady's gilt in the first class as being one that's just extremely attractive on the profile. She's one that's really, really good at the ground on her feet and legs. She's one that's got a ton of shape when you study her up high. Really, really like that gilt. Young lady's gilt in the second class is probably a stouter featured one. She's a heavier bone, bigger footed kind of a gilt. Really love the dimension she's got through the center part of her body. Really love the way that front shoulder, the angle to that and the way everything works and ties together there. Really, really appreciate that gilt for a lot of things. Young ladies gilt out of the third class is another stout featured heavy bone kind of a gilt. It's got a ton of shape up high. I'd like to see her maybe come at me a little bit wider and a little bit square at her knees, but that is really, really a good kind of a gilt to win that third class. Young man's gilt coming out of the fourth class is a bigger outline kind of a gilt. That's kind of the, I think her frame size is about perfect for where we need to be in the industry today, and I love how stout and how square she is from the ground up. I love the amount of product that she has. That gilt just puts the most pieces together for me today. She's going to be your champion. The second place gilt comes out and definitely does not take anything away from this drive. She's one that's really, really opened up. She's one I talked in class. I think she gets a little more coupled up through that front end. One I'd like to elevate at her shoulder a little bit, but she's super, super square. Gives you a ton of shape. To me, I think there's a younger gilt out here that just gives you so much positives. The young ladies out of the second class is going to be your reserve.
Got her done? All righty. Okay, in our last deal, the champion Yorkshire went to Bailey Allercomp of Kendall County 4-H, and the reserve champion was Sterling Skinner from Hale County 4-H. And now we're getting positioned for our supreme champion overall. We'll call them out as they come out. Okay, we still need the Durocs and the Hampshire, the breed and reserve breed champions. I'll call their name out. Okay, we're still looking for our champion Hampshire. Well, yeah, that's so. Everybody here is not good.
Only if they're good. Only if they're not good people. And we don't have any reserve dogs.
And we need the reserve dark OPB. These validation guys want to pull hair on these breed reserve breeds. We've never done it. Yeah, just let them do it.
Reserve spots back here.
Okay. I may do some things to the ring help now. You got a minute if I do it?
You got the showmanship thing?
Yeah, but that'll be after this.
Okay, I didn't know. Well, I'm on your schedule, so I got all the time in the world.
While we're getting ready, the state validation people, if you have a breed, a reserve breed champion, if you'll stay in the arena, they want to go ahead and pull hair on these hogs, and these men will do it. The Heffernans are here. So if you have when the show is over, if you have a breed, a reserve breed champion, hang out here so they can go ahead and do that. And I'm going to say some thanks. I want to thank all the ring help. There's really too many people to mention, but they've been here, some of them 3 days, reading health papers, directing traffic, and they really do a hard job. It's the biggest show we had. We had 611 entered, and can you guys give them a round of applause for all their hard work? And I also want to thank the Stock Show Association. This is the 16th year we've had this show. It's slowly grown, and really glad that the quality is good and the participation is good. To all the parents that spend their time and money with these kids, we really thank you guys, because it's a big sacrifice to do. But if you keep these kids in these show barns, you'll turn out to have real good people when they're grown up. And lastly, I really want to thank our judge, Jonas McGrew, and his wife, Jill. They've been here, and they actually left Friday morning at 3 to get here, and their plane didn't leave tomorrow till 6, so we're going to have them another day. But they've really done a good job. It's been a big class, a big show, and can you guys give him a round of applause for taking time for these kids? Okay, our champion Berkshire was Caleb Cotter from Wichita Falls FFA. Our reserve champion was exhibited by Madison Walker of Comfort FFA. We don't have to turn it out. No, we're good. You ready? Ready for the next one? Yeah, go ahead. Okay, the champion, dark OPB, was Cameron Collard from Paint Rock FFA. And the reserve champion, dark OPB, was Hannah Snyder from Shackelford County 4-H. Okay, and our champion, light OPB, was Taylor Leffler from Lampasas County 4-H. And our reserve champion was exhibited by Josh Couch of Sulphur Springs FFA. Our champion Duroc was Braden Smith, Abilene Wiley FFA. And our reserve was exhibited by Peyton Arrett from Bront FFA. And on our Hampshire drive, the champion was Riley Campbell from Hale County 4-H. And the reserve was Sage Lovelace from Plains FFA. Then our champion spot was Logan Webb, Ingram FFA. And our reserve was Owen Seidenberger from Glasscock County 4-H. And of our Yorkshire breed, our champion was exhibited by Bailey Allercomp from Kendall County 4-H. And the reserve was Sterling Skinner, Hale County 4-H.
We'll all call.
We still need the reserve dark OPB up here. We still need it. Please make your way. Your name is Hannah Snyder from Shackelford County. Please come to the ring.
Let's give these young exhibitors another round of applause. This is without a doubt an exceptional set of livestock that we've got out here right now. I think they represent their breeds extremely well. And with that being said, it's been an exceptional set all day. I mean, I've sorted through a bunch of hogs, and I've sorted through a lot of quality, and have been very, very pleased with the kids and with the set of animals that have been here. I got to say, us being from Illinois, it's something to come down here and see a show this big with this quality of swine that's all Texas bred. That says a lot for the breeders in this state. That says a lot for the kids in this state. And I just think you guys definitely need to commend yourselves, and I commend everybody from this state that on the quality of the kids and the quality of the livestock. And there's nothing better than raising kids in a barn. There's nothing better than the experience that they take from that they take from the day-to-day work that comes with caring for the animals. And let's just let them relax for a few minutes, guys. But there's just nothing better than the experience they take for caring for the animals on a day-to-day basis, and then coming to the shows and the interaction that they have with other kids. And there's a million worse things that they could be doing with their time, and there's a million worse things that the parents could be doing with the money that's spent on these projects. And it develops exceptional leadership skills, their communication skills, and just skills that are going to help them grow and help them in whatever department they go into when they get out of school and when they move into the workforce. And it really, really does. It really, really does instill values in these kids that a lot of kids don't get, that aren't in any kind of livestock showing, or aren't in any of this magnitude of an industry. With that being said, I think all the parents, all the ring help, everybody needs to give each other a big pat on the back, and let's give everybody another round of applause. I've talked about all these hogs several different times today, whether it be in class, whether it be in their breed champions. There's definitely an exceptional set of hogs out here, and in my mind, there's two or three or even four of them that really stand out. And there was one that really stood out, I guess, that I thought was going to be in the hunt, and maybe doesn't look quite as good next to a couple of the others out here. But in my mind, this champion drive comes down to two gilts out here. The young man's big Yorkshire gilt. I just love the design and the profile and the stoutness that this gilt gives you, and for the size and the weight that she's at, she really just motors around this ring with plenty of flex, and I think that gilt can just go all day. The other one's the young lady's Chester gilt. This gilt takes about the longest stride I've ever seen, and you get off to the side and study her, and I've caught myself doing this 2 or 3 times. I get off to the side and I study her, and I think, man, she's getting outside of her skeleton when she sets those back legs down. But you get behind her, and she's just so wide-based and so wide-bodied that she's not. She's actually staying true. She's staying true step to step. That gilt that's another gilt that just gets around this ring and motors, and she's got a big old chest floor in her. Those are two just really, really nice gilts. In my mind, it kind of comes down to those two, and I'm going to walk over here and shut the mic off and grab the banner, and I'll go shake the hand of your champion gilt.
Well, there is our Supreme Champion Gilt, and it's exhibited by Bailey Allercomp of Kendall County 4-H.
Congratulations.
I won't take any more time. I know that it's been a long, long day for everybody out here. I wanted to extend my personal gratitude for the Wilde family for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to come down to San Angelo and judge. And we've definitely enjoyed our experience here, and I've enjoyed sorting through the livestock. And they've been a great family to work with. Dale and both his sons have been a great family to work with, and really, really enjoy talking to them and hanging out with them. And just really enjoy that, and want to say thank you, and also say thank you to the ring help. They've really made this a successful show, and they've made everything extremely easy on me, and just made this show run as smooth as it has. With that being said, I'll go out, and the York Gilt that comes out here certainly doesn't take anything away from the drive. She's one that fits right in with the rest of them. She's just as good as the one that was above her. She's just as good as everything else here. With that being said, I'm going to grab the reserve banner and go shake the hand of your reserve champion, Purebred Gilt.
There we have, then the Reserve Supreme Champion was a champion, Chester, exhibited by Taylor Leffler of Lampasas County 4-H. And we have a showmanship prize that's donated by the stock show. And I've been checking these kids all day long and making notes. And to me, showmanship's not just about following a hog or doing a good job showing. It's also about being courteous to your fellow exhibitors and courteous to the ring help and the judge. And you can kind of tell if these kids have worked with these hogs at home. And the lady that we've selected is from Littlefield FFA, Kinley Kleiber. If you're in the barn, you're the recipient of our showmanship contest. And thank y'all for coming. We hope to see y'all next year. It's been a long day, but glad y'all stuck it out with us.